Well, hello and welcome to the last of our 6 Friday Hangouts. But not quite, as you'll see a little bit later on. There's a little extra to do if you wish, but this is the final wind-up, sort of like the culmination, if you like, of the MOOC that we've been working on. As usual, what I want to do is just to try and wrap up some of the themes that we've been looking at in this particular unit. And there isn't so much to talk about what's coming up next, because it's the end. There's a little bit I want to say towards the end. One of the things I hope you realize about this MOOC is that, in a sense, what we're trying to do is to get you to think about the way you want you to appear in your web life, if you like, in your terms of your digital identity, which is really why we've finished with this particular unit, because the development of your identity and your digital reputation ultimately is about you being digitally literate, you taking charge of the way the world sees you on the web, and you controlling it and you manipulating it to a degree in some kind of crafted way. What's more, I don't just mean that you're out there, but I mean that you do it in a crafted way. So whilst you're in charge of your identity, what you're actually getting across to your audience, the people that you want to see what you put there, is some kind of a reputation, which is an identity plus, if you like. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But that's really what we've been working towards in all of this. We started out this MOOC really talking about crowdsourcing and trying to get you to think about putting a footprint on the web. And that footprint was no more than an idea that you had, and then in it you may have had an idea, but have a look at other people's ideas and see how you can improve, refine, develop, improving, if you like, what other people have done. And then in the third one, of course, we started to talk about reliability and validity and so on. What we've been doing throughout these previous 5 units is getting you to think about placing footprints on the web. And each time you put a footprint out there on that web, what you've actually done is said something about yourself. And whilst you may have had some kind of image in your mind of an audience who's going to confront what you've said and think about it and look at it and whatever else, what you want to me, and what do I want to put about me out there for other people to see, so that other people might even join up different areas, different sites, in order to see what you're saying about in how others see you based on how you present yourself. And in that unit 5 that we did, the shift that people intend one thing and something else occurs, this law of unintended consequences, if you like, where we were looking at wanting to get code 99 out of 100, it's because based on assumptions or mistakes or errors or whatever else. So we thought, if you care how people can make mistakes, hopefully it'll give you enlightenment about how to not make them yourself and to sort of be safe in there as well. So you can see that there's been a gradual development through the whole of the MOOC to arrive at this final unit, where we say, now start to think about how you're going to manage yourself out there on the web, how you're going to come across, and that you should have had that sort of enlightenment, if you like, as the course has gone on, that you may have started this MOOC out being very tech savvy, but you understand that being digitally literate is a different thing altogether, and that you need to make the transition across between the two, from one to the other. That's what we have. Sort of wrap up here. Some people were saying in the wrap up this unit, some people what they didn't see, and they're very happy about that, and so on. But sometimes, even the picture that we choose to put against our name says something about who we are, and it's actually very difficult to interact with actually putting some. And there are a number of people who I know really not very comfortable with a web presence, and yet the photograph, the selfie picture that went with it, actually said an awful lot about who you are. So I mean, there's an element of control there as well, if you like, in terms of controlling those elements. But remember that if you interact with the web, even to say that you don't want to interact with it, you are actually interacting and you're out there. And therefore, it is much better to take control of the way you come across on the web, rather than try and control it by keeping it shut down. Remember that if you don't talk about yourself on the web, others will. Others will, because you're friends with other people who are web active. And when that happens and people Google search your name or whatever else, they may come across you by reference from other people as well. So be wary of trying to control that web presence in that way. Sometimes it is actually better to manage what's out there rather than keep it shut down. It's not always possible. There were a few people I also noticed on the activities that were very uncomfortable with putting a video of themselves on the web, which I absolutely understand, and that's perfectly reasonable. And it sort of goes to my last point. To choose not to put videos of yourself out there is a perfectly reasonable choice about how you wish to be presented. You don't want that on there, and that can be a positive choice if you want. And a number of you who in that position use the avatar software that I suggested, the telegami.com. If you have a look back in the text of the activity, and I think some people mentioned it in the Windup on Unit 5 as well, in Unit 6 as well, you'll see that people mentioned telegami.com. If not, just simply Google avatar software. The idea there, of course, is that you can present on the web and you can say what you want and you can have a picture of what you're talking about behind you, but your physical presence isn't required because actually you're controlling an avatar instead, which is a computerized representation of yourself. And you might find that that's a more comfortable halfway house, a kind of a compromised position, if you like. For that as well. Not many people mentioned Ancestry, which interests me. I accept that Ancestry.com or any of the Ancestry sort of websites are paid for sites, and that may well be the reason, but very interesting way of trying to work out what your identity on the web might be is to explore your forebears, because that is actually part of, if you like, you can make it part of your continuing journey onto the web and beyond. So I understand if you haven't, but it was markedly for me the fact that I didn't see anyone using the Ancestry. And culturally, I thought that might be quite interesting for some people to do that. So, feel free to look at that. But I do accept that might actually come at a price and that you may therefore not want to do it. I've tried to make a policy in this MOOC that any software that I've shown and demonstrated is freely available, so that there's no question of being charged for them or anything like that. Further point I want to make about this, actually developing a digital reputation here, this is the first generation, and certainly the generation that came to the web really from talking in the 1990s. They're the first generation that will actually now have, whether they like it or not, a digital legacy, which means that there will be footprints about you on the web somewhere, even if you don't put them there. And I think that's quite a challenging thought, because what it means is that whereas I can look back in my family tree, someone in America has very kindly done it for me, and I can see bits and pieces of births, deaths, and marriages of my relatives, this generation will actually almost have daily records if people wanted, and certainly through Facebook or blogs and other sites, you can actually look up what in 100 years' time your future generations will be able to look back and say, I wonder what you were doing on this day in August in 2015. And therefore, this is the generation that will have a web legacy. Now, bearing that in mind, some of you may actually want to generate that for your future generations. You might think that's an interesting project. And certainly if you keep a weblog, a diary on the web, a weblog is conflated into one word, blog, weblog, blog. If you keep a blog, then you're actually producing not just a record for yourself, but for generations to come, a story of a person's life at the beginning of the 21st century. That might appeal to you, and you may want to go down that line as well. So think about the fact that we are the legacy generation for having web presence and how we sort of keep it on there. So we started out with crowdsourcing, we added ideas to that, we then went through reliability, validity, we then thought about the wider issues of our lives and where that goes with the web. We've looked at assumptions and the fails and the passwords that people use. I trust nobody on this MOOC is still using 123456 as a password, as it is perennially the top password ever. So if you want to hack, that's where you go first. And now we've reached the end of our MOOC, where we've started thing I want to say about myself out there. What you're really doing is getting to that sort of personal technology ownership space where we're able to say, hello world, this is me. And that's quite a profound thing to be able to do. In the past, we may have had certificates where we've been able to say, hello to your local, which you would carry around as a piece of paper and say, this is my qualification, this is what I know. You might be able to take several certificates around in a people what I look like when you see me. You could actually meet people one person at a time, so they could get an estimation of who you are and what you're like, and what your attributes and aptitudes and so on are like as well. But this generation, again, is the first generation where we can genuinely say, if we have a reputation, hello world, this is me. And by this is me, I mean the rounded me. This is what I'm like, this is what I think, these I believe, but it is only a part of what makes me up. It doesn't define. That is actually a profound statement. This is important. You can take your step to anyone, anywhere in the world. You're no longer limited to just showing who you are and what you can do to those people that you can physically place yourself in front of. And you can have presence and match with prospective employers and other people who may influence the course of your life. Several people deep all at once. You can do that. It's profound stuff. So bearing in mind that level of profundity, actually having something somewhere that you're really happy you are put together from a digitally is an extraordinarily powerful thing to have. Very powerful. And it really does move people away from this idea of just simply using technology in a sporadic or somewhat disjointed manner, fragmented manner, and seeing something purely as something for fun or something for administration, which of course the web is, but it can be so much more if you take control of it. And certainly bearing in mind the lessons that you've taken from this MOOC, I hope that you will have at least developed a degree of confidence that you can actually do that and be happy with the presence that you've got. That gives you your digital identity. But remember that that doesn't stop there. Nothing ever stays still, particularly on the web. That web identity is what you manage, what you of a digital reputation of who you are, and that will have profound effects on your future economic well-being, your ability to interact in your local communities, and your ability to have fun and enjoy the internet. It's one of those sort of paradoxes, really, that the people that control their internet activity most successfully find that what it does is that it buys them time to go and do more interesting things, and because the web doesn't overwhelm them, they're able to put so much of their that perhaps we might value more, because we've used technology to great efficiency. So look at that sort of control and efficiency argument as well. It should be fun, and perhaps that's almost like the litmus test paper, really, of where you're going with your reputation. That it's fun, it's enjoyable in where you are. Okay. Few last lessons then I'd like you to take away with you from this MOOC. Before we talk, one, remember being tech savvy and digitally literate, and that there is a difference between the two, and that you wish to be the latter, not the former. Point number two, your digital reputation is vital to your future. Work on it, develop your identity over time, and let your reputation speak for you amongst those that view it as you go. Point number three, that you're sees many choices about how you interact with the web as there are people interacting with it. There is no one right way. So find ways and methods that are right for you, that you're comfortable with, where you feel you have the right level of control, and stick with them and work with those particular levels. There is no one package out there. Find the package or packages that work for you. We create, yes, and remember, think back to Unit 2 when we were talking about validity and reliability. Make sure that whatever you put on the web, that it will never be something that you may later in your life regret. There are methods of removing things from the web. but it's better if you don't put them there in the first place. So when you want to write something, make sure it's something you're not going to regret. And if you're fired up about something and really want to let rip on the web, sometimes it's better to write that and then not post it, and then come back to it in a few hours, read it again strongly about it, moderate it or don't post it. Sometimes simply writing about it can be cathartic in its own right, and you may find that actually a little moment's pause and reflection before you write back sometimes is a good. You've got to look at, have I targeted at this an individual? Because if you have, then you've lost the argument. If you're making an argument, it's there to support the views that you put in as well. Otherwise, you're not adding to a conversation, you're simply detracting from it as well. So remember that point as well. Okay. Now, a lot of MOOCs will ask you to work through a particular unit and then do something that gets marked by somebody. And you will have noticed in this particular MOOC, we've tried to steer away from anyone else assessing what you're doing other than you. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, we feel that it's really important, if we're trying to get you to develop your digital literacy, that you take responsibility for your digital literacy. So we're asked you all the way through this in those reflective forms, the Google reflective forms, to reflect there about what you've got from the unit, and then look at those unit outcomes and see which of those unit outcomes you think you provided evidence for. Now, put on judgment yourself. In short, instead of saying to you, be passive, do as you're told, and then simply submit work, and someone else, like me, will tell you if it's good enough or not, which wouldn't work in this kind of MOOC. We've asked you to think about what you've said, self-assess what you've said against some standards, and you decide if you think that what you've done that in order to share it with them. What it means is that it's perfectly possible for two people at completely different standards to provide evidence of the same learning outcome. The quality of the outcome, the quality of the experience, and the quality of where you are in terms of your personal development is all wrapped up in the quality of the evidence of your reflective writing. So that really is the key for you to go back to. And if you want to improve on any of these items, then you should be able to return to your reflective writing, look at the evidence of where you think you've improved, and ask yourself the question, how has this evidence deepened my understanding, moved my understanding further forward, so that you not only are you self-assessing, but you can also in the future assess how well you're improving. You can assess your own direction and also your own pace, and that's important. It's a bit like having external. Who really cares? The point is, you need to look at what you're doing and say, have I improved since I last assessed myself? And if so, by what degree and in which direction? And am I happy with that? And if you are, good for you. And that's good stuff, because that will also help you understand how you then need to plan and the next things of insight to say areas a bit weak. I've not got a lot of evidence there. It could be I could do with some more study in that particular area. So through this method of self-assessment and outcomes, not only are you learning to be critical about your own progress, but also if you follow the process through, it will be telling you what you need to do next. It will help you plan your own learning journey and the next steps in your learning journey, because remember, learning never stops. These aren't episodic things with a full stop at the end. They're just simply an ongoing conversation for your whole life. So what it's going to do, hopefully, is no else did you need to do it, but because you had the enlightenment to realize that yourself. So reflect process introduced here and on those learning outcomes and how we've done it. I think that's a really important lesson in itself, if you like. Place of learning, framing, you will 6 that whilst many of you about who you are and what you want other people to see, that's great, but the real value in that unit was that you made choices about who you wanted to be seen on the web, and that was the real bottom line thing that I wanted to get out of this. And every time anyone posted in this unit 6 did that, what they're actually saying to us is, hello world, this is me, and that is what I'm trying to get at 6 in. Well done to everyone that did that, and there's some really good stuff out there. It does. There aren't good and bad presentations. We're just different, and that's what you want to see. Difference, people taking charge and being comfortable of the way they put themselves out there. Okay, how are we doing for time? We need to wrap up. Look, for this next week, if you have completed all 6 units, you will see at the end of this unit 6 an opportunity to go on and gain a certificate. What you need to do is simply to self-certify that you have worked your way through all 6 units, that you completed the units, and critically, that you have collected the 6 badges. If you have collected the 6 badges, then you can move on and collect a certificate for the whole of this MOOC. And well done to those of you that choose to do that. We at Derby and all of us involved in this MOOC sincerely hope that you have found this an enlightening experience and an uplifting experience, and an experience that will actually help you find in the future greater and better. Maybe you will learn your own learning in the future rather than simply leave it to others to tell you what they think is a good idea for you, and that would be really powerful. And luck, well done, and get out. Hello, this is me.